Hey everybody, it's Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich. Hope you had a great 4th of July. Now we can start focusing on Tropical Storm Elsa and really for the Western Carolinas. And I'm talking about my folks in Greensboro, High Point, Charlotte, Columbia West. Not much of an issue at all. This is going to be a coastal event only. And even for coastal areas, the threat's pretty low, but there are some risks, and I'll talk about those with today's update. So here's a wider view. I like to always start wide. We've got that stationary front, another hot, humid day across the Carolinas. Here's our system. You can see it down there over Cuba right now, sitting basically just offshore of Cuba. It's still technically over water. We'll zoom in real carefully, but you can see this is not a very well organized system. And what I mean by that is, the center is up in here. All the storms are over in here. So it is not your perfect setup for a tropical system. Typically, you would want to see all of the storms not here, but actually over the center or even to the western side. So it's very lopsided. It kind of looks more like a comma. And when you see something like that, that's typically an indication that the storm is not very well organized. And that's kind of what we're seeing today. So I'll loop it a couple times so you kind of get an idea. Now, because of that lopsided nature, if you're on the right side or the east side of the circulation, you're going to have the worst weather. And we talk about that all the time. There's the bad side and the good side of the storm. Not that you want to be near it, but there's a good side and bad side with every storm. So because of the track of the system, and I'm going to show you the track here, we'll put the cone up first. I'm going to stop this in motion, and we'll put the forecast track on there. I'm also going to put the wind radii on there because you see how lopsided it is. So we expect it to, over the next couple of days, really start to move north over the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And typically when it gets over the Gulf, you'd be like, oh, Brad, that's bad news. It's going to get strong. Well, there's a lot of wind shear. We've got a lot of things going on in the atmosphere. We've got a trough over here, high pressure here, stalled front. So the environment is not conducive for strengthening. It could get a little bit stronger over the eastern Gulf, but the wind shear is not perfect for it. So it's not going to be one of those storms that's going to sneak up on you. Then it moves into Florida. Now, for the Carolinas, this is going to spend a lot of time over land, at least the center is. As it moves through the eastern part of South Carolina, this is going to happen early in the morning. And I'm going to go to my other source here just so you can see it. You can see 8 a.m. or 8 p.m., Wednesday, it's over Georgia. 8 a.m. Thursday morning, it's over the low country of South Carolina. And by Friday morning, it's off the East Coast. So it's going to be picking up some speed. So if you're going to the beaches, primarily this looks to be a Thursday event. A late Wednesday, probably Wednesday night into Thursday, midday time frame. And it's only a tropical depression. Now, only tropical depressions can still produce wind, storm surge, maybe an isolated tornado, and heavy rain. But the speed of it certainly works in our favor because it's going to be hauling as it moves off to the north and east. So a couple things I'll show you real quickly. I'm going to show you the intensity forecast. Not expected to get strong. These are outliers. These are always kind of wacky ones. But we could see a weakening to a tropical depression as it moves to the north and east. The tracks all right along the coast. Now, here's where things could be a little interesting for North Carolina. If it hugs the coast a little more, I do expect some storm surge could be a problem, especially out here in eastern North Carolina. This is an area that's more susceptible from Atlantic Beach, the southern Outer Banks. There could be some higher than normal tides here. And I think if we're going to see some storm surge issues, it could be out in here. One thing I always like to look at, and I'm going to show you real quickly, is the king tide calendar. Isaias last year kind of caught us off guard for a couple reasons. One, it strengthened rapidly before landfall, but it happened at an astronomical high tide. The high tides were 3 feet above normal even without the storm. So you throw a storm in there, it just ramped everything up. If you look at the time frame here, here's July's calendar. We don't see a king tide or an astronomical high tide. There is a new moon on Friday, which typically we would have a little bit higher than average tides. So that's something to keep an eye on because that might be more of a player in the forecast for the end of the week. Now, the steering currents, pretty straightforward with this system. As I mentioned, we've got a lot of wind shear going on in the atmosphere. There's a little dip here. We've got a trough that dug in. There's a stationary front here. The Bermuda High is driving most of this, and this little trough is giving this narrow path for this storm to go. So actually, the track of this thing is pretty straightforward. I think the big caveat and the big question is going to end up being the intensity. But there's nothing in the guidance or anything that sets up that says this thing could flare up to a more significant system. But obviously, the more time it spends over water, either off the west coast of Florida, or even if it sneaks offshore off the Carolinas, then it could get a little stronger. But remember, it's going to be well east of us. Now, one chart I look at too quite a bit for storm surge is this chart right here. And you can see this is water levels. And I'm going to kind of move this over so you can see this. I'm going to move my head up here just for a second. But these are the water levels. So you can see about maybe 3 feet above normal water levels down here in parts of Georgia. And then you go up into areas of North Carolina. You could see towards the Outer Banks, some of these areas, I'm just going to quickly, tally this. You could see, it's about 2.18 feet above, main water level. So that's not really all that high, but you throw some waves on there and the astronomical nature of the tides, that could be an issue. I think the biggest concern with this is going to be rip currents and dangerous surf. So Wednesday, Thursday, probably not days I would be getting in the water if I'm at the beach. Now, speaking of the beach, we get a lot of questions about, should I cancel my plans? Right now, I don't think so, because it just looks like a rainy, windy day on Thursday, and then this thing is out of here. As far as that rainfall is concerned, back towards the west, we don't expect much direct impacts from this system in the Western Carolinas. In fact, in Charlotte areas west, we don't expect rainfall from the system. Now, there'll be rain, but the typical afternoon thunderstorm setup, all the rain from Elsa is going to be along the coast. And even there, it's not a huge flash flood risk. So let's look at this future cast of this thing as it moves north to kind of time it all out. All right, so let's look at the future cast of this. And we could see here's our tropical storm making landfall in Cuba tonight, heading up towards Florida tomorrow. So this is the 6th in the morning. And I'll stop it right here. You can see how it's going to impact Florida. Really heavy rain bands, some pretty good wind, kind of paralleling the coast. So the surge probably in the 1 to 3 foot range. Then it crosses over Florida. Now, as it crosses over Florida, it's probably going to stay, the center is going to be mainly inland, but there'll be a lot of it offshore. So offshore, the winds will be pretty high, and this is what could help drive some of the storm surge, even with the center over land. Notice as it moves through, this is, late. Basically, what is today? Today's the 5th, so this would be Wednesday afternoon, moving through South Carolina, and then Wednesday night kind of moving up the coast. Notice not a whole lot of rain back to the west, so we need the rain in the Western Carolinas, not a whole lot. So this is going into early Thursday morning. This is 12:30, midnight basically. We go into Thursday morning, 6, 7, 8 a.m., and then by Thursday afternoon, it's out of the region, and the wind actually swings around offshore, so things will dry out fairly quickly. So as I mentioned, if you're going to the beaches, this is not going to be like ruining the whole week. It's really, this is Wednesday night. I'll back it up. I think Wednesday late in the day into Wednesday night, and then early Thursday, and then this thing is gone. So you could see it's in and out fairly quickly and then gone. Now the thing to watch out is you see these winds on shore. Anybody on coastal areas like barrier islands, very flood prone areas, tidal areas, those are the ones to watch out for. It's not so much the rain and wind, it's going to be any kind of storm surge. So keep an eye on your tide gauges. If you're in an area that typically gets flooding during a king tide or an abnormally high tide, you might want to think about moving that car or getting things away from the coast, because this will be probably 1 to 3 foot storm surge, is what I'm thinking right now based on the guidance we have. So 1 to 3 feet above your normal tides. And if that happens at high tide, that could be a problem. So we'll keep an eye on the system, but right now this is nice trial run for a lot of us with this system. But we'll keep an eye on Tropical Storm Elsa throughout the weekend right now. No expected impacts in the Western Carolinas, but on the coast, Wednesday night into Thursday looks to be wet and windy.